Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of In the Umpire's Clubhouse. I'm Bob Busser. He's Dale Scott, and there he is. There's Jim Joyce.
Hi, guys.
And today we've got an umpires roundtable. We got a guy who's been a Dale and Jimmy are going to have a field day today. We have Tim Tschida on board. Timmy, I'm just going to let Dale and Jim introduce you because they know you better than I do, and this is going to be fun. So take it away, Dale. Go first.
Well, wait a second. We're only on for an hour. That might take up the whole show.
Well, this is
Introducing
obviously
me.
going to be a mini series, and you can buy the box set if you want to get the whole thing. And listen, Tim and I have paralleled through our whole career. We went to umpire school the same year, different schools. He was in Florida, I was in California, but we went to the advanced 1 week school together. The first year we did work together, but the second year he was in the California League. I was promoted to the California League in May of '82, and we worked the rest of the season that year, and we'll have some stories about that. We both went to AA. Cheats got to AAA in '83. I got to AAA at the start of in May of '84, and I joined none other than Larry Young's crew that had Tim Tschida on it. We worked Instructional League after the California League, and then also we worked Winter Ball in the Dominican together. It was Tim's second year there, my first year, and Tim's first year there was with, I do believe, Mr. Joyce.
Yes, it was.
That is correct.
That's where Mr. Tschida and I first met. Was in the Dominican.
Yeah.
God, that's a century ago.
It sure is. The funny
And
thing
then-
about that, we had 6 American umpires, which was the first time they ever sent 6,
Right.
and 4 of us made it to the major leagues out of the
Yeah.
6. Tom
After,
Howard and Greg Bonet.
After that, to continue this parallel, Tim and I got hired by the American League on the same day. And then we had the opportunity to work our first World Series together in '98, and throughout the whole big leagues, we only had one full year together, and I believe it was '05.
Sounds about right.
I think it was the year before you was a crew chief. I think it was that.
That's correct. Yes.
And so. We have worked a lot of games together. We've had a lot of, hilarious times together, both in this country and abroad. and so I'm happy to have you here, Timmy, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Oh, God.
And Cheats and I go back too. We're the same way, and we started a little after that. After Dale was talking about, we started out in '83 in the Dominican, '83, '84 in the Dominican, meaning crossing over from January 1st. We were there for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then Cheats and I actually worked, I want to say it was '93 with Don Dickinger and John Shulock.
That is correct. Yes.
And we had a blast that year. And then we kind of parted ways for a while. And then did the 3 of us work together one year?
I don't think so. Not for a season, but then when you were on my first crew. You were my 2-man with Jeff Nelson and Jimmy Wolf, and then you became crew chief, I think the next year, or close to that, something like that. But that was a fun year, man. And, one of the greatest compliments you and I ever got was when Joe Torre became our boss. And I had a situation brewing in Pittsburgh, and I called him before the game just to let him know to have the TVs in the office set for this game because I expected confrontation, and it certainly came true. And after the game, Joe called me, and he said, I got one question for you. I said, what? He says, well, I'm going to the track tonight. He says, can you tell me a horse that I should pick for tonight? Because you sure called this one ahead of time. And I said, you know what, Joe, don't give me too much credit. I said, I've just been doing this a long time. And he goes, well, he said, I always knew this, Timmy, that when you and Jimmy Joyce walked on the field, I knew that umpiring was not going to be a problem for that series, which was a very, very kind thing of him to say. But you know what? He was right. It was true. And we had such a strong crew that year. It was like, it wasn't until June where we finally ran somebody.
I agree.
It was just the season went so smoothly and so quickly. No bumps in the road really to speak of. It was a
Actually,
great time.
and you're exactly right. Joe Torre had said something to the same effect to me. And as a matter of fact, when Dale and I we worked that 2001 World Series, we kind of got the same kind of compliment.
Yeah.
But you and I were together more in the big leagues as crew members.
Yes.
Other than Daryl Cousins and Jim McKean, for me, I think I worked with you more than anybody else in the big leagues. And it wasn't out loud so much, but you always got that attention that we were doing our job. And we had players that actually would come out and they didn't say anything. They just kind of looked at it and gave you that nod, and you knew what that meant. So,
well, there's no doubt that, and we've all experienced it a certain year. I mean, Cheats, that year that we worked together in '05, we had Isonia and Culpa, and we took care of business. But there is no doubt that when you've been on a year where the crew is so solid, you just get the kind of like Jimmy just said, you get the feeling when the teams see who they got. It's not like it's a love fest, but they just understand, hey, we're gonna, it's gonna be it's gonna be a solid.
Well, it's always, the crew. All three of us have been crew chiefs at one time or another, and a crew can only be as strong as its fourth man.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had strong four-mans. Jimmy Wolf, if you're going to ask for. I mean, and how about Jim McKean or Don the year that we were together, Jimmy, having Jim Joyce as your number 4 guy? Yeah. I mean, they would stand in line to get that assignment. And, Dale, you worked a lot with Richie, which was so beneficial to any young umpire that came up. I was really fortunate because I worked with him my first year. And then I went to Dave Phillips, who was another strong crew chief. And after that, I was with Dankinger for 13 years.
Right.
And, it's just so important that you get the right, work ethic instilled in you when you first get there, and, building your confidence quickly and knowing that you're doing the right thing.
And conversely, there have been a few times that the crew was composed such that there was going to be there were arguments more than it just happened. I mean, somebody wasn't as respected or whatever. But Tim, I want to start this out just from the get-go of the Cal League when you and I worked together, because it wasn't even a full season. It was 1982. It was both of our second year. I was scheduled to go back to the Northwest League, and then in May I got a call. You're going to the Cal League, and off I went. And I was going to be working with Tschida, who we knew each other from Bradenton, but we really didn't know each other that well.
Right.
But we bonded quickly, and I was telling Bob before we were recording earlier today. That was not even a full season, but that was the year that you and I led the league by far with ejections, and it was, in fact, it was what got us fired basically from the Cal League. Explain to these guys what was going on, because it was a unique situation in the Cal League. We all had apartments in Modesto. Had a couple of apartments. We could, out of the 10 cities that we went to, you could commute, I think, 7 of them.
7.
Yeah. So you'd go work a game and come back. So every night, guys would come back to the apartment at different times, depending on how far their games were. And we would sit up all night and have a few adult beverages and talk about what happened in our game. And that's when Tim and I discovered that we were red asses.
It was quite interesting. It was, we had a new league president and who thought he really understood umpiring better than anyone. And his philosophy was, if you had to eject someone from a game, that you had totally mishandled the situation. And it turns out, when Dale and I got together, we would come back to the complex every night and say, hey, how was your game? And these two guys, no problem. Anything? No, nothing. Anything? No, nothing. How about you? Well, I ran the pitcher in the second inning off the mound, and then I had to run the manager right after him. Oh, yeah, I called a guy out on strikes, and he bumped me, so I had to run. I got to write reports here until 4 a.m., so I'll be back to the cribbage game in an hour. And it was that way every single night. And I truly, in our hearts, we both felt like every ejection we had was deserved, and it was legitimate, and it wasn't that we were going out there looking for trouble. As most people, we've all heard the expression, they look for trouble. We look to avoid trouble. That's the last thing any official or umpire ever wants to do, is have to write reports and have to deal with nonsense. And it got to the point where I was I was getting down about it, because it was my second year in that league, and things didn't seem to be going very well. And then finally one night, remember we had a lot of Mondays off at that time in the California League, but there was a game in Modesto one night, and we were off for some reason. And you had friends in town, so I went to the game by myself, which was, we lived in Modesto, so it was 10 minutes. And I went late after it started, and then I kind of sneaked my way up real high in the stands where no one would see me, and I watched the game. And if they missed one ejection, they missed five. And I'm talking about calling a guy out on strikes who takes his bat and just slams it both hands off the bat on the ground. Then off comes the helmet, and then he's in his face, and nobody's getting run here. And then the manager comes out and doesn't diffuse the situation. He chimes in, and that's all I needed to see. I go, well, you know what? If I'm going to have to put up with it, I don't want to stay in this. I don't want to stay in this job. This is not worth it. And then later on, it was late in the season, and I remember that Phil Roof was managing the Visalia Twins, and a guy named Pete Wisenant was managing in Modesto, and they were playing each other like 2 weeks before the playoffs. And they both looked at us and said, well, we'll see you guys in the playoffs, right? And we both shook our heads and said, no, we're not working them. And he said, you got to be kidding me. Said, no. So Phil Roof went to Jim Rance, the farm director of the Twins, to complain about it. I said, Phil, I appreciate it, but give it a rest. I'm going home. And then we went up to Rohnert Park and had a nothing series. Both teams were out of it. And we worked our game and did our job, as we always do. And we get in the locker room after the game, and there's Dick Nelson from Umpire Development. Dick never let you know he was there. And he said, look, well, I got to backtrack, because like a week prior, we were in San Jose, and the league president came in and just scolded both of us and told us we were the two worst umpires on the planet, and we should seriously consider another career, because you're not going to be back in this league. I can guarantee you that.
And just to interject, Timmy, he said, he goes, and again, we had like 16 and 14 ejections between us. And he said, Tim, I'm so disappointed in you. Your second year, and all you do is eject people. And he looked at me and he goes, Dale, you weren't even here a full year, and you're just a copycat of him. I mean,
he just. No, I can tell you what, Dale, you could be a copycat of something worse, But anyway, but I was never more down in my life. And I remember, because I was driving back to Modesto, and again, you had friends in town, so we drove separately that time. And I was driving that little stretch of 580 that we've driven over the years past San Francisco Airport and all that. And I was all choked up, and I was crying, and I'm thinking, I'm going to call Father Lavin at St. Thomas University. I'm going back to school. I don't need this. This is for the birds. And then fast forward again back to, we went to Rohnert Park, and Dick Nelson shows up. And he just cut right to the chase. He said, look, I'm going to tell you both something right now. I know the league president hates both of you. I know you think you've had a tough year. He said, you're both going to be in AA next year, and you're both going to instruction league. So don't burn any bridges. Don't tell anybody what you think. Just finish out your games, and that's it. Take it to the house. So we actually contemplated getting up early for our night games, the last two games up near Santa Rosa, and going wine tasting before the games. But we decided against that.
We just went ahead and bought the Boone's Farm into the hotel room.
Why drive all the way up there when I can go over to the Circle K and buy something with a twisty cap that's easy?
Yeah, well, absolutely.
So that was it. And then we both went to AA, and I always remember the first day of umpire school. John McFerry always said, every time, actually he told me this when we were the day our 15 guys went from Florida school to advanced school, he says, if you get a job, he said, just always remember that every time you walk on the field, just try to be the best umpire in your league, because you never know when that opening is going to come at the next level. And when it does come, they're going to take the guy that's doing the best job. So don't spin around, do your job. And sure enough, how those opportunities come. And then, the next year, like when Dale came and joined me, he may have had to stay the whole second year in the Northwest League, but I doubt it. But what happened was the vacations start right around June 1st, for one thing. So that created movement. But then, unfortunately, Lou DeMuro was killed from the American League staff. He was run over by a car in Dallas, and that created more movement, unfortunately, that being the cause. So, boom, again, how are you going to know that? Well, who they taking? They're taking the guy that's doing the best job. And the same thing was true for me in AA and on. And again, and I will say this, and I'm not by any means taking credit for it, but the night in '84, Dick Butler came into Louisville, and Dale had just gotten there like the day before, I think. And Mr. Butler was there to tell me that the American League had bought my option, and Dale had the plate that night. And umpires will always tell you, we all miss pitches. Well, he had the plate that night. He had a 15-inning game, and he didn't miss a pitch. And Mr. Butler saw that he was the first guy to see you in AAA, and he didn't waste any time. He just went in and filed money on you immediately. And how can you predict that?
You can't.
You just got to go. You just have to go out there and do it. And
well, that's what
will take care of itself.
That's why you should have the mindset from day one when you get in the minor leagues that every game there's a supervisor there. Every time you walk out there, because Dick Nelson would only see us twice a year,
right?
So it's very easy to say, the odds are he's not here. You can't take a night off because you never know who's in the stands. One thing, just to follow up on that little lecture we got from the Cal League president. Neither one of you are coming back to this league. You're the worst umpires, whatever. And then we went to AA. There was, for several years after that, a joke in the minor leagues. They said, "Hey, maybe you'll get lucky and get fired in the Cal League. You'll make it to the big leagues." Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody that Joe Gallardi hates is on television.
But it was, that was such a. When you're going through it, Tim, like you were saying, you were down and things weren't going, but that's what's so weird about this job. And that's why when Marty Springs said, and he told all of us is, don't get too high and get too low, because right. It's never as good as you think it is. And it's never quite as bad as you think it is. Right. If you can keep that even keel, because it's a marathon out there. That's baseball season is a long time. Day in and day out. Of course, we're in AA, or in A-ball. It's two-man. You're working the plate every other day, right. And so that was such good. It's such a simple philosophy or advice, but I got to tell you, it stayed with me my entire career. When I was high, okay, guess what? Yeah. It's not that good, and especially when I was struggling, saying just calm down. And get back on track. And I used it practically every day that I worked ever since Marty told me that.
Till the bitter end. And I'm watching these games now in the fall, and I still watch the playoffs. I watch parts of games during the season, and I go to about maybe 10 games a year here at Target Field if I'm, if it's a nice night out and I'm not playing golf. And we're seeing a lot of these younger guys now who aren't so young anymore, but they're working their first LCS, LCS plate game. And you look back on those, and I kind of wish that I was there to tell them before the game. And I'm sure their crew chiefs have probably conveyed this message, but you tell them, hey, when you work these games, it's one pitch at a time. Don't look for rhythm. Don't look for anything smooth. Don't look at the clock. The pitch clock, yes, but not the time clock. Don't look and see what inning it is. Don't check the score. Just one pitch at a time, Don't look back to think about it, and don't look for, just be ready for the next one. And when they stop coming back out onto the field, that's when the game's over. And then you're going to be up for 6 hours winding down before you can even think about putting your head on a pillow, because the three of us know what it's like. Those games take it out of you. And Larry Barnett probably put it best. He always said, "These games will age you, Timmy. Let me tell you, they age." He was right.
He was right.
And I'm not,
Let
I'm
me
not
ask
so,
a question
I'm
real
not,
quick for
Yeah,
all three
go.
of you guys. When you obviously you guys are veteran umpires, you've been around, you've seen just about everything. What's your opinion of today's umpires as opposed to when you guys came up? Do you see the camaraderie that you guys have, or is it like more business? You know what I mean? Take your briefcase and leave after the game. Do you guys? What do you think of the new umpires?
I'd like Jimmy to go first. He's been kind of shut out
oh, no,
here.
no, go ahead, go
No, I
ahead.
want no Jimmy. I want to hear your version.
Oh, no, I think the game's a lot different now.
Yeah.
And I think our job and our game, our part of the game is totally different now. Uh, our learning experience when we were younger umpires was invaluable. I mean, our crew chiefs that we had, and then we became crew chiefs, we carried on the tradition. And it's just like what Tim's talking about. We used to have those discussions with our crew when we found out that they were going to the playoffs. I'm not privy to what's going on right now in the locker rooms anymore, but I suspect, and I might be totally off the record here, or I don't think it goes on as much as it did before. Um, First of all, we've lost so many guys in the last 3 years. We lost 10 umpires, and out of that group, I think there was 5 crew chiefs.
Yeah.
So you have all those new crew chiefs, and I don't think they have the experience to talk like Tim was just talking about to your crew. Um, I can remember, and Tim and I have both done this, and Jeff Nelson is probably one of the best umpires that I've ever worked with in my career. And I'm sure both of these guys would say the same thing. But Jeff just needed to hear it every once in a while, and you gave it to him, and he was outstanding. I don't think that goes on anymore, and as much, I should say. I shouldn't say never, but that's my feeling. And I think it's so robotic right now that they've kind of lost the personality of the game to a certain degree. And these guys do a good job. I'm not taking anything away from them. I'm talking about the mental mindset of the game. So
Yeah.
maybe I'm totally off base.
Well, it is different, and the thing is now, we would come off the field after working the plate, and hey, Cheats, that strike three in the third inning on so and so, was that a good pitch, or I mean, now again, I haven't been in the locker room in a while. Things that I've heard and I saw a little bit toward the end of my career is it's a beeline to my numbers. What did I do on my numbers? And everything is centered around whatever that machine tells me that I did. And their whole mindset is on that. Now I understand that because but we didn't have that for most of our career, and
Right.
you relied on communication with your partners, obviously videotape. You would watch pitches or plays, but it seems like it's kind of like society. Everything is on the phone. We're just looking at the phone. Everything's on the phone. It's like everything now is on the computer or whatever, just to get numbers, and that's how you judged everything. Before all of us left the field, we had Quest Tech, and then we had ZE or whatever the systems that graded us on the plate. And there were times that neither dugout said a word, not a word, and the game went smooth. And I'd look at my numbers, and it's I had a shitty plate job according to the numbers.
88%.
And then conversely, I've got the place is on fire. Everyone's bitching and moaning. I come in and I go, and I miss 3 pitches. I go,
Yeah.
okay. It was like it's very confusing for guys that had to transition to this new thing, because there's something to be said about controlling your game and running your game. I mean, that's what we were taught, and you still have to do that, but now everything is centered around that damn machine. So I don't know. It's just a different type of game. It's a different type of game for umpire. Plus, not even mentioning pitch clock and trips to the mound and all that other stuff. So.
It seems to me like there's no character umpires anymore. Like, back in the day, you had Eric Gregg, you had Joe West, characters of the game. You don't have that anymore. You don't have that, it's like Dale said, that it's almost like they're robotic, you know. They don't want to make a mistake.
Well, one thing, Bob, it changed too. I mean, with replay, the arguments now are
Absolutely.
it's a different animal now. Now they're bitching about check swings or whatever. But I mean, not I mean they did before, but now with replay, instead of a guy, oh geez, guy going every, they just hold on, okay, yeah, so now you go to replay. That was the beginning of how things really changed for us.
And I think it was
One of the things
and
I
I think
fear.
it was to a certain degree a little bit intentional, to be very
Yeah,
honest
yeah.
with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's no question. One of the things, when I go to the games, if I get there early enough, I'll go down and say hi to the guys, especially if it's guys that I had worked with. And one of the things I notice is I watch them on the field, and they don't seem to be having any fun. I mean,
Right.
it's not like you're going out there to screw up, but they're just so rigid. And nobody's talking to each other between innings. And not that you're standing around BS and looking like you're waiting for a bus or something. It's just not the way it is or way it was. And the emphasis on home plate work is so overblown that I was afraid that they forget, the baseball people, the gods forget that you're on the bases 3 out of 4 nights. You're only back there once every 4 nights. So it's the plays on the bases that used to create more problems for us. Well, replay has changed that. I was concerned that with the input of replay, which I'm in favor of, by the way, that they would give up on trying to get a play right, because what's the difference? I'll go to the video and we'll get it right eventually. Well, that's not necessarily true. And it's just, again, yeah, like Dale said about they run to that video, and they're going out together afterwards and going here, they're going to 4 different places, they see each other in the locker room, and they stay 90 feet away from each other during the game. And I'm glad I'm not working these days. Those are the things I miss. I miss the guys. I miss the camaraderie, the locker room, flying together, those kinds of things. The game was the easy part.
Well, Jimmy told me when we first started doing this, he goes, after the games, we'd all go get a case of beer and sit in the locker room. Dale said the same thing, and talk about the game and shoot the shit, and
Right.
it was every night you guys did that. It just doesn't seem like there's that camaraderie, like you guys said. You can sense it on the field. It's a different animal now than it was, 20, 30 years ago when you guys were umpiring.
They're tense. They're tense.
Yep.
Because, like Dale said, they have no downtime anymore. They're either watching a clock, or they're counting throws to first. They're counting trips to the mound. They're looking to see if this guy called timeout or that. I think it's just a matter of time before check swings are going to be replayed. The problem they're going to have is when they show a check swing in any game at any time of the year. The camera angle is usually about even with the on deck circle. The umpire is way over here at the third base. So if he moves the bat at all, it looks like they go all the time. And they'll show this angle, and you go, and then, whoa, he definitely went at that. And, show one over here. No, he didn't.
Right.
But,
right.
So they're going to, and I was a big proponent of when they were bringing replay in, and when we started, or when it started, we were working, and they came in with what was called foul pole to foul pole. That was all. And I was a big proponent of they have to have a minimum number of cameras in the same position in every ballpark. You can't have this angle in Fenway and this angle in New York. They have to put something on the line. They have to put something here. They can add cameras. That's fine. But you've got to have that minimum. And sometimes you get ballparks that don't have cameras in the same spot. So you could be looking at 2 different telecasts and see 2 different outcomes. So it's still not perfect by any means.
No.
It still has a long way to go.
No, and the thing is, we knew about replay. You would hear, oh, good, we're going to get replay. So these are fans or media or whatever. We're going to get replay. So now, no more controversy.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, football had replay. There's still controversy. I mean, there are certain plays you cannot tell. There are certain plays, one angle looks this way, one looks another way. I remember I had a game where I had a play at the plate that, right when you needed to see it, the pitcher that was backing up went in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And the camera had a perfect angle. I mean, a great angle to see what happened, and it was blocked out. So things happen. It's not going to just, mysteriously, nothing is there's no controversy anymore. The other thing I just wanted to reiterate that Tim said is that, check swings are a bitch. They are not described in the rule book per se, and I'm kind of glad they don't, because that would create probably more issues. But the camera angle is so important. You never have one on the line where the umpire is at. Now, if you have a camera that is on the outfield side of the dugout, that angle is going to be different from the plate side of the dugout. And depending on where that camera is at, it might, but it's never where the umpire is at, what he's looking at. And when you're talking about just a difference of, mere inch, or I mean, it's so quick, so such a little difference between a swing and a non-swing and whatever, and then you have these angles that are not what the umpire sees. It just causes everybody to bitch and moan. One more thing I wanted to say, because I like to talk a lot, is because I think that and this is just my opinion, I don't know, but I think baseball with the ABS, the automated ball strike system that they are pushing, and eventually I think will be there, but with replay, with all this other stuff. Look what has come into the game the last several years that used to be never talked about. Gambling. I mean, every team has on, they've sponsored DraftKings, they've sponsored fan, whatever. And so you have people now from their couches, betting on pitches or, at bats. And if an umpire, and in that stupid strike zone on the monitor, if an umpire calls a pitch that's just a little bit off the line, outside, supposedly, strike three, and some guy's got a bet on this guy. I mean, I think the outrage of bettors, because it's so proliferated, if that's the right word, has caused baseball to say, man, we need to have something to help push down this demand that the umpires are missing every call or whatever. Because my God, the whole staff for an entire year on the plate is near 97.5, 98%. Correct. And so I really think that has helped push this narrative that we need to have robots and we need to have, all this other stuff. And that's just my opinion.
Well,
I'll disagree with you on one count there, Dale.
Sure.
It's not taking place on their couches. It's taking place on bunk beds in college dormitories.
Yeah, absolutely.
College students, the number of degenerate gamblers that are in our colleges today is completely out of control. These kids are, they're taking every credit card app that comes in the mail and they're signing up for it and they're maxing it out that night. And you watch these kids I bartend part-time at a place, and I'll see a 22-year-old kid with his friends, and they're glued to the ball game, and a pitch comes in and they just, it's a pitch. It's a pitch, and they're getting all worked up over it. And then the guys will say to me, like, well, this guy's on the take. Look at that. And I'm going, you poor son of a gun. You don't even know how to enjoy watching a baseball game.
Right.
But that's how bad it is. And it's not going anywhere anytime soon. This is only going to get worse.
Oh, absolutely. Tim, my wife is a lawyer. Dale and Jimmy know her. And we talked about this when gambling came out, and I said, they're opening up a bad can of worms. And I have buddies that are SIDs, and they said the exact same thing. They said, we have just seen the tip of the iceberg. Yep. The kids in college are getting popped now. Players are getting popped for gambling, Right. And as Dale and Jimmy know, and Tim, in every clubhouse, do not gamble. You cannot gamble. Do not bet on baseball. Get booted. Yeah. Rose, Pete Rose, I'm sorry, he's not going to get in the Hall of Fame.
Well, he thought they'd never drop the hammer on him, and they didn't want to. He just made him do it because he refused to change his ways, and God rest his soul. But he had plenty of opportunities to come clean, and baseball was willing to let him. They just wanted him to do a few things, and he, the poor guy died in Las Vegas, for crying out loud. What does that tell you?
The thing is too, and Tim, you touched on it. it's not it used to be oh man, he blew that call, or that cost him the game or whatever. Now they're saying, oh, he's got money on this.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
someone's paying him off. I mean, because they're gambling on the game, they think that somehow we are too, or we have
Yeah.
a vested interest in
I
a
still,
financial
I
interest.
still to this day, I mean, I you're gonna laugh at this. I still, when somebody says, "Well, I'll take Dallas -2," I still don't know what that
I
means.
know.
Okay, does that mean they got to win by 2 or lose by more? I don't know. I don't know. And then the way the baseball line goes, I don't understand that either. I
Yeah.
do know from friends who do bet baseball that you have to bet like 200 to win 100 or something. I mean,
Right.
it's a crazy way to spend your money, but I'm totally uninformed when it comes to how that works. But if you saw the 60 Minutes thing about 2 months ago about gambling on college campuses and how bad it is, and again, like you said, it's only going to get worse.
Oh,
It's only going to get worse. And then
absolutely.
This is what cracks me up. When we were young umpires, the three of us, when we were young umpires in the American League, Dick Butler was still in charge. He was our supervisor, and we were preached at that they did not even want us to go to Las Vegas.
right,
There were bars. There was actually a list of bars we weren't allowed to go to.
right,
And one that pops into my head right away was Shepherd's, and that was one of our favorite bars
yeah,
in Milwaukee, actually Waukesha,
yeah,
and and it had some connotation of gambling and stuff like that. We ignored that one though, by the way. We
yeah.
kept to Shepherd's, but it was ingrained in us, instilled in us, and Tim's right. It's so prolific right now. You don't know if anybody's in on it anymore at all. So
I've got
I still think the umpires are still diligent enough to know when they walk in that door, like Dale said, there's that poster right there,
yeah.
and you abide by it. I still believe that the umpires still do that. So
Funny, right after the Rose suspension was in '89, and a friend of mine was getting married in Las Vegas, and baseball had sent out info following that to stay encouraging people to stay away from Las Vegas,
right.
stay away from Atlantic City, all these things. Well, I'm in the guy's wedding. Okay. Gambling has never been my thing anyway, unless I was betting pesos in the Dominican Republic, which was like paying 15 cents a pop, okay, that was for fun.
Been there.
But yeah, I was standing right next to you. And so I go to Vegas, and I've never been to the sports book at any of these places. And I wanted to see the sports book at Caesars just to see how it worked, and I didn't want to bet anything. And I walked in, and the first guy I see is Frank Robinson. And I go about another 50 feet, and there's Don Zimmer, and I saw about 7 baseball people. I said, I better get out of here. Somebody's going to come in with a camera. This isn't going to be good for me.
Well, ingrained in us is exactly right, and even more than drugs. I mean, you get a lifetime suspension on drugs, and then 2 years later he's back in the. But gambling was like a big deal.
Yeah.
A friend of mine and I used to go to when we did it for many years, but the first time we ever did it, we went to Vegas in the off season for just a fun weekend. Well, the first time we did it was in October. It was during the World Series. Okay, I mean, I didn't think anything of it. Just we're going. I mean, the thought didn't cross my mind. I'm going to bet baseball. We're going to Vegas to have a fun time. But when I walked in, the place is packed because the game's going on. Right? I felt I said I got to get out of here.
I felt the same way.
I was mortified, and I said, and I told him, I said, listen, I love the Vegas trips. We have to do it in November on. I said we can't go when baseball's still being played. Even though I wasn't doing anything, I felt like I was really, really breaking a rule just being there.
One of those degenerate gamblers in there recognized you. You can
right,
count it. That's
right.
how much they know us. Do you remember before they have, now they produced all this statistical line for all umpires. There
Yeah.
used to be one that was kind of a pirate thing. It was called the Umpire Fact Sheet, and this guy printed it because this was before the internet,
Right.
and it was out, and it had us all listed as, if I recall, according to this guy's information, and he's doing all this statistical research by hand. I was a pitcher's umpire. I was an under bet. My games tended to be advantage pitcher and low scoring. And there was one other factor that I don't even know.
Like the home team won more, the visiting team.
Yeah, exactly. Road homer or whatever you want to call it. I had no idea. I still didn't understand most of it, but I said to I said to the head of security of Major League Baseball, I said, What's the big deal here? And he goes, hey, if it's a pick 'em bet, they're gonna factor you in. I said,
Yep.
well, who's got the plate? And then I learned, over time, how much we learn. That they always talked about Earl Strom in the NBA. His if that was a pick 'em game and Earl Strom was working, they say bet the road team because he was considered to be a road homer. Now we all know that's not true.
Right.
It just means that he probably has the guts to call something against the home team in their park and doesn't care about the consequences. Little things like that. People will try to factor in their own thoughts as to what all this information really means, and it doesn't amount to a hill of beans, to be honest with you. When it's all said and done, if a guy breaks his bat and flares it over the second baseman's head, and the guy who scores from second with the winning run, what's the umpire have to do with that?
Yeah, well, and
Still,
those
go ahead.
stats mean in 2004 during the regular season, I think I had 3 series, 10 games with the Cardinals. They were 10-0.
Yeah.
And so as luck of the draw, however they did it, I had the divisional series game 1 on the plate in St. Louis. And when I walked in, our clubhouse guy at the time, forget his name.
Big kid.
Big kid, right? Kurt.
Sweet.
He goes, "Oh man, am I glad to see you?" And I didn't know that stat, right? He goes,
Right.
"Am I glad to see you?" And I go, "Why?" He goes, and then he tells me, "We're 10-0 with you this year." And I go, "Oh, good."
And where's he getting that info?
Right, right.
He's getting
But
it
I
from
said,
Duncan.
I
He's getting it from Duncan.
yeah, well, done, yeah.
He's getting it from Duncan. And let me tell you something. I think it was maybe the next year we worked together. We had the Cardinals Mets.
It was the next
whatever
year.
it was, and you had the plate in New York, and we ended up running Duncan and maybe LaRussa too, because they thought having you behind the plate was a lock for them.
Well,
little did they know, we have no idea what they're talking about.
Well,
I don't have any idea.
And so that division series was against the Dodgers, and St. Louis won it in 4 games, I think. Well, I got chosen for the World Series that year, and so when I come in and it opens in Boston, but the visiting clubhouse by our locker room was just right there, and Kurt says, man, are we glad to see you? They got swept. Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
they got swept.
Well, sorry, I couldn't bring it home for you this year. I don't know. I did my best. Again, if they only thought they have no idea that the only thing any of us cared about when we walked on the field was the next pitch. I just got to get that right. Eric, don't bother me with all this other, rigmarole. I don't know. That's too taxing on my brain. All I know is that if it's here, I'm going to say strike. If it's there, I'm going to say ball, and that's about it. You guys determine the rest.
Dale,
you don't realize it.
Man, I have to thank you for 04 and not going back to your Cardinals ways of,
as a Boston fan, yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, and I didn't have Boston I didn't ever had them in the World Series, but I was actually glad for them and for baseball that the Red Sox finally, the old breaking the curse, that they were able to have a championship, because that is a very, very loyal fan base. Last place to first place, and that was good for baseball. I don't care. Anybody can say whatever they want. It was good for them that they were able to bring home a couple championships.
The Red Sox fan is known for, during that curse was known for getting close in '86. The whole thing. But on that point, Timmy, the next year when I went to Boston and I had the World Series ring, with Boston, and I showed that to friends that lived in Boston. I mean, tears came to some of their eyes. I know. That win, breaking that curse, the way they did it by sweeping the Yankees after being down 0-3, and then just go ahead and sweeping the Cardinals. I don't know if you don't live in New England, I'm not sure if you or if you're not a Boston fan, I'm not sure if you know how that affected them. And I think the same thing with the Cubs when they beat Cleveland.
There's no question.
Because it's
Baseball
such
needed
a
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Dale,
And
I
then, the other thing with the Red Sox at that time was Dave Roberts played a big role.
oh
And
yeah,
he stole second, and then
Jimmy had
Millar had a big play. Well, Millar was the guy that predicted it. Have we ever umpired two better guys in our careers that totally respected us and let us do our job and understood what we meant and how important we were to the game. I was glad for them. You can never cheer. We don't cheer for guys when they're playing, but when it's all said and done and we see a guy celebrating, yeah, we can feel happy for him. He did it. They did it on their own. I'm glad to see Roberts. He's had a great run here at the Dodgers manager. Yeah. I mean, I always really liked David. He's a smart guy, good guy. And that's another part of the game for us. I watch these managers and I watch all the analytics and everything. There's another facet of the game that those guys aren't having any fun either.
no,
They don't know how to interact with umpires. Now they used to have to answer to a GM and an owner, right? Now they got to answer to 2 pages of vice presidents for each of these teams. And they're meeting all the time because if the team went 3-7 over 10 games, they're getting it. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, he's got to argue more. He needs to get ejected more, and this and that. They just have to answer to too many people. And I watch them all, and you watch them. They're like presidents. They age right before our eyes,
right?
And you just go, what are you doing? I mean, you should have enough money by now. You really want to stay there? I don't know, but I guess maybe if we were still young and nimble and could get around, we might still be out there too. I don't know.
Yeah, the game still has that mystique. It
does.
It's still, in my opinion, it's still the greatest game out there right now. Obviously,
there's no question.
It's the only game that's played the way it is every day. No other game is played that way. And you're right. We've lost a lot between the lines with interaction with players, with managers, coaches. I think we even had a better when everything changed. We still had the interaction with coaches on the lines because we were close to them and we could still talk to them.
Well, there aren't any coaches on the lines anymore that play in the big leagues.
Exactly.
Except for Sandy Alomar and Joey Cora. I can't. Yeah. The rest of these guys I've never even heard of.
Yeah, exactly.
The Twins just fired their hitting coach here. The guy was a hitting coach in the Northwoods League. And 2 years later, he's a hitting coach for a major league team, and they're batting .212 as a team. How did he get hired? Wait a second here. We don't know any of these guys.
No.
And how many managers out there did we? Go back to when I was working. The only managers that I didn't have as players were Gene Mauch, Bobby Cox, and Joe Torre. Every other one of them I either had as a manager or a player in the minor leagues. We knew each other already, and so it's not so hard to establish yourself with 3 or 4 new faces versus 32 or 30 or however many teams they have now. It's just different. We came up together and I mean, I've known Buck Showalter, Joe Madden. I've known those guys for 40 years.
Right.
We go back to instructional league together. We go back to rookie ball together. And these guys, the players come up really fast. They come right out of the draft. How many players this year went from A ball to the big leagues? And the umpires, they move pretty fast too.
Yeah.
And to the point where, they don't really know each other. They don't know each other the way we did.
Well, when you have 10 retirements, I mean, when we went out, I mean, we were sporadic. One there, but that 1 year, I don't know what, 3 years ago, they had 10 guys leave.
10 guys. Those guys went. All those guys went because they knew that this earpiece thing is just a matter of time, and they didn't want to relearn again. They didn't want to have to go through that, and I don't blame them. But think back when we had the plate and they started chirping like they do now out of the dugout. Most of the time, all we had to do was look over there.
Yep.
We didn't even have to take our mask off. Just look over there, and somebody knew you. Well, 1 or 2 guys, the manager or coach, somebody would say, "Enough." I've seen that look. I've seen that look before, and somebody's going to go.
To emphasize what you were just saying, Joyce, Tschida and I got hired in the same day in '86. You were hired in '88.
9.
89, and
But
then
you came up a lot before that. I mean, you
right. But
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
and then Cedarstrom was right around there. So the four of us were hired before 1990, I believe.
Right.
And no one was hired again until the 99 debacle of the union. So in 15 years basically there were 4 hires in the American League.
Yeah.
And we had 10 in 1 year just the other day or just the other year. So things let's face it, we don't want to sound like I walked to school uphill in the snow every day both ways, I mean, but it was a different game.
Sure.
It's the same game, but it was a lot different, and things have changed, and a lot of it for the better. Cheetah said earlier, I do like replay. I'm glad we have replay. I'm not against replay, but it changed the way you do things, and it changed the way you interacted with players and coaches, and so I'm not against that. It's just made things different. I wanted to cover one thing, Tim, because our first World Series together was 1998,
Yep.
and that was when the Yankees had a juggernaut team.
They won 125 games.
Right. I mean, they were
125.
insane. I mean, they just threw their gloves on the field and they won. I mean, that was pretty much how it happened. So we get the World Series and we're thrilled. It's a that's obviously a goal, and we're going there. So the night before Game 1.
Oh wow, you're really going deep on this
in New York.
I know where you're going.
We all went out to dinner at Gallagher's.
Yeah.
And I was celebrating.
Yeah.
We all were, but I was celebrating a little bit too much. It was obvious that I was overserved.
Bad ice.
Bad ice.
The next day we had a lunch, all the umpires with it was a shoe company or something, or somebody that the union was. I forget who it was, but it was.
I think it was Vans.
It might have been, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Dunklin. Yeah.
And Garcia was the crew chief of the World Series, and the ranking National League guy was Jerry Crawford. Right. And I'm not well.
I told you not to drink that Grand Marnier. It's not good.
It's
full of sugar.
It is, and I just love to say Grand Marnier straight up. But I feel so French. But I finally, I'm pale and I'm sitting there and the thought of eating was not something on my mind at that point. And finally, Crawford was sitting next to Tim, and then I was sitting, and Crawford, what do you do? He nudged you and said, "Why don't you tell Scotty just to go back to his room?"
Yeah, I said, he should probably go take a nap. But I said, well, just remember, Jerry, we're in East Coast time, so we're not throwing the first pitch till 8:45. We still got time. I put it this way: he can't feel any worse.
Yeah, I was dismissed.
He's already there,
thankfully so, and took a nap. But I do remember, Tim, that we were at Yankee Stadium. We did the home plate meeting, blah blah blah, and we run out. I had second base. You had left field.
Right.
That Game 1, and you and I were standing in shallow left field as they were warming up, and we looked at each other, and you looked at me and he said, "Long way from the Cal League, isn't it?" And it was.
I think I said a long way from Lodi, California.
Lodi.
Lodi. Yeah.
It was a moment that was just so cool because of our history of working together throughout, and here we are, and part of me was going, "What the hell am I doing here?" But it was those moments are, I mean, you get them once, right? I mean, you only have your first World Series one time, and it was really something special. But we laughed about that whole luncheon.
You laughed until you cried, but I was crying for you.
It's like being on the golf course and going out there, and all of a sudden you just hit 10 bad shots in a row, and then all of a sudden you hit that one, and that golf god keeps saying, "This is why you play golf, is for that one shot."
Yeah.
Umpiring's a lot the same way. You go out there, and that one day, it makes it all worth it. It makes it all worth it. And we have a lot more days than that than in golf, because we're much better at umpires than we are at golf. I don't know about cheats, but I know.
We had one of the we've all done appearances and we've all done interviews, and we always get the same question, and that is, what was your biggest moment? And I always say, well, I get that all the time, and there is no biggest moment. There's a whole bunch of, but they're all the first. Your first call up, your first play up, your first All-Star game, your first World Series, your first. So you remember those, but what they don't quite understand is how much we really, really care about doing a good job, and how sick we feel when we know we've messed up. But when you talk about all you got to do is hear it once, I remember late in his career, and not far from the end of mine, Bob Davidson was on my crew, and Bob said to me one day, it was like June, and he goes, I've never been on a crew like this before. I said, what are you talking about? He says, it's June 1st. We've got like one ejection, and you got Bach and Bob on your crew. I said, well, I'll tell you what, Bob, I'll tell you why it is. And it's not because I'm great. It's because I was taught by the best, and I've done what they told me ever since I got hired. And Richie was the best teacher I ever had, and he never, if you were somebody that hustled and worked hard and cared about doing a good job all the time, he would just take you in, and he not only did he teach you everything, he taught you everything that he knew. He was very, very unselfish that way. And I said, don't think, he always said, don't think that they don't notice, because they do. They do. And all of a sudden one day we had a play, and Bob was working third, and he was not real thrilled about me insisting that my crew go out on every fly ball. I said, you don't have to sprint, but you got to get out there. We're rotating all the time. That's just the way it is. You're working. If you can't do that, you're going to have to find another home, because if you work the system properly, you don't have to run hard. You just have to get out there. But Bob went out, and he had Alex Gordon had a diving, really, really nice play, and Bob was right there, and he called him out. He got to play right, and we looked great. And about 2 innings later, Gordon was coming after a third out, was coming by, and Bob was in left field, and Alex said, hey, we really appreciate the effort, because the Royals were like 25 games out, and when they come out, the last thing they need to see is a crew that's out there just mailing it in, because the game doesn't mean anything. It means something to somebody. There's a manager over there who's fighting to keep his job. The last thing he needs to see is you out there mailing it in, and not paying attention, and not caring, and laughing and doing all that. It's important to them. And how hard is it to go out there and work hard for 3 hours?
And the worst thing you could ever hear on a field, if it was on your crew, and it didn't matter which crew member it was, if somebody on either side of the lines would ever say, you guys don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I was lucky. You were lucky. Dale Scott was lucky. We never heard that.
Well, we weren't lucky. We made it happen. We benefited from our efforts. We made our own luck. And
that was one of the.
We drank the same Kool-Aid.
Right.
To put it simply, we just drank the same Kool-Aid, and we found out it works.
That was one of the things that if I kicked a play, if I determined the reason I kicked that play is because I didn't hustle.
Yeah, that's on me.
That's not me. I mean, if I did everything you need to do and I just kick the play, okay, that happens, and you try to correct it, obviously, and stuff. But if I one of those days, I thought, I'm just kind of tired and then blah blah blah, and I have a play that, and maybe I didn't even kick it, but I know I didn't do what I should have done. Right. As far as hustling in or doing whatever, and I would say, Dale, what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, that's on you. I control that, and if I screw up because of that, man, I was so down on myself. So I just wouldn't. I told myself not to do that, and it's like you said, drinking the Kool-Aid. You just were. It was ingrained that you do everything you possibly can to get a play right. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but by God, you did everything you're supposed to do.
Well, there's another thing that we really enjoyed what we did, and we showed it. It showed in us. We didn't just stand out there. We enjoyed what we were doing.
Yeah,
and that's what seems missing these days.
I agree.
There's that, and one of the things that really, really grinds my gears when I watch it is when they combined our staffs in 2000. The management staff we adopted mostly American League policy.
Right.
as far as field coverage was concerned. And over time, the guys have been able to convince baseball that you don't have to go out on fly balls, only ones that are trouble. Well, you know what? You're not good enough to do that. You see major league players misjudge fly balls. If you think you're good enough to stand out there and see a ball hit and go, that's fine, that's fine. Oh, I got to go. It's too late. You're not going to get a good look at that. And then your crew is having to run hard because you made them wait. You get out there. They don't go out on fly balls. And I've been to about 10 games this year. Every single game, except when Mark Wigner's crew was in town, featured one or two calls that should have had an umpire in the outfield, and controversy was the result of it. And that's their fault. You can't let that happen. And they tell people the old line of, wow, you're in the big leagues. You don't have to do that. No, you're in the big leagues. You have to do that. That is why you're in the big leagues. And what major sport official goes out there with the attitude of, I'm in the NBA, I'm in the NFL, I'm in the NHL. I don't have to do that. Baloney. You're the benchmark. You are the one that people look up to. You owe that to the profession, and you owe it to every umpire down the line, no matter what sport they're in. You have to be the example, and it drives me crazy when I see that. I don't like that one bit. You know, they've asked me a few times if I wanted to be an observer and be no, they don't want me. They don't want me, and I'm not you know how I am. I'm a big fan of umpires, but if you're a dog, you don't want me with a pencil in my hand. I'm sorry. It's just, and I don't want to be that guy. I really don't. I don't like to hurt people. I don't want to, you know, I just said no. And even I talked to Jeff. He did it this year for the first time, and he's not sure he's coming back. He didn't care for it either. I've got other things to do. You know, I don't necessarily want to do that.
I'm not sure if this was a factor, but that transition from going out on everything to suddenly, we can pick and choose when we go out.
Yeah, right.
I hope that because we have replay, that's not a factor in it.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's guys want to keep working, and they're too old to be working in the first place. You know, we had a guy just retired, 69 years old. Another guy his goal. You know, his goal is to work when he's 70. Be the first guy to work in his 70s. Guess what? He's been overdue for 15 years. He's still going out there. We're not going to name names.
Well, in the umpires clubhouse,
as hard as we worked and as good as we were, and I'll say that for all of us, we had no business being out there right now. It's a young man's job, and these guys have the athleticism. They have no excuse for not getting their hind end into the outfield.
Well, and I just a little promo, Bob, in the umpires clubhouse director's cut. We'll name names and
yeah, we'll write it. Dale will write it down and forward it. But you didn't hear it from me.
No.
Cheats is claiming the fifth. I don't know. I know nothing.
How much time we got left? I just got to take a little. I get somebody's at my door. Actually, so
go ahead.
I'll be right back. How's that for an excuse?
Yeah, I hope that the people are enjoying this. It gives you guys a whole new look on umpires. They're human beings. They most of the time, as Dale has said and as Jimmy has said, they get the calls right. It's the ones that you miss that are amplified. Especially if it's in the World Series or playoffs or something like that.
It's a lot of times it's situational.
Exactly.
You miss a pitch or a play with nobody on in the second inning in May, and it's not much of a to do. You miss that same play in September, October with the runners on and blah blah blah. You're the worst umpire that ever walked the earth. I did.
Yeah, I kind of been there.
And Jimmy,
it reminds me of that story you told me, Dale. You told before about in New York where the lady held up the sign. We're proud of you, Dale, for coming out. By the way, you still suck as an umpire.
Right. Yeah, that was an email I got or a letter I got. Yeah.
Yep.
Which I loved, by the way, because that's exactly the way it should have been.
I'm sorry about all the stuff that's going on my end of this, because I just want to put a disclaimer out there. I don't want to let people think I'm rude or whatever, but I'm under a remodel right now, and I've got a guy who's a fantastic worker, but we have a language barrier a little bit. And so
es la problema. Dígame. Dígale a hablar conmigo.
Listen, we laugh though.
Tim,
when I went to the Dominican, the fact that you spoke Spanish was a godsend. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I all that time in school when the few times we took, you had to take Spanish, and I just, I didn't even want to. I tried. I had no effort into it whatsoever. I regretted that for the day I started doing baseball. But that would have really, really been nice if I would have understood what they're saying.
Yes.
Well, and all the Latin players knew that I spoke Spanish, so I never had a problem with a Latin.
Right.
Yeah, they couldn't cuss you out in
They
Spanish.
used to come to me for help.
They couldn't cuss you out in Spanish because
Nope.
they knew you knew what they were saying. You
No,
know?
when a guy in Spanish starts blasting me, I go, I don't like your tone.
Yeah. Well, I had one night in the old stadium in Toronto. Remember that one? That was
Exhibition stadium.
temperature was never above 40 degrees there, and the wind was always 30 miles an hour. Well, I had God, who was the catcher? Oh, it was Tony Pena, I think. And Tony Fernandez was batting, and I called a strike on Tony Fernandez, and he kind of, Tony never said much. He was a pretty unapologetic Christian guy, Tony, but he started to mumble something down there, and I said to him in Spanish, I said, "You remember that I speak and understand Spanish, right?" And he was looking down, and he just started to laugh when I said it. And he stepped out of the box, and Tony Pena got up, and he's laughing like crazy. They said, "Oh, that's right, Timmy. I forgot about you." Yeah, so, okay, what do you say we just start over then? We'll keep it above board.
We're getting up on it, guys. Tim, thank you so much. You're going to come back. We just scratched.
We didn't even. This is just the tip.
Oh yeah,
this one.
Dude,
we haven't even talked about the Dominican.
No, and
Tim,
we haven't even touched on abortion. I mean, holy cow. You should get in on one of those conversations.
I'll pass, thanks. My friends who watch these podcasts, they go, "You guys look like you're having a great time." I said, "Yeah, you were getting the stories that people don't know about, that the average fan doesn't hear, and they're funny. You're giving insight to stuff that goes on that people don't know about."
Unlike all the books that have been written by most officials and umpires, these are all true.
Yes.
They're actually true, and they are true to the point where they actually, some of those books where a guy will share a story of an umpire that it was somebody else, and then they make themselves the umpire in the book in order to sell the book.
Exactly.
We don't have to do that. We literally, we're telling you the truth. I mean, it's that simple. And anybody that played during our time can tell you that.
Oh yeah. Just don't ask Cito Gaston, right, Dale?
Well, yeah.
Some guys had trouble with him.
There was a moment. But hey, Tim, thank you so much. Look forward to doing it again. And like we said, we haven't touched on some topics that are another show.
Well, that's right. We must have timed it just right because my low battery light just came on my phone. So I guess we burnt. I hope that wasn't my own personal low battery light, but it's my phone. My battery still feels pretty good.
You need a mechanic or a cardiologist. I'm not sure.
I need both, I think, right now. It's one day at a time.
Tim, you still have time to go out and play 18 today. It's only what, 12:30 or 1:30 in Minneapolis?
It's under 60 degrees. I don't go up. Sorry.
Everybody, I want to thank all of you for viewing. He's Dale Scott. He's Jim Joyce. He's Tim Tschida. Cheats, thank you. We're going to have you on again. And remember, don't be a sheep, everybody. Take the road to the left. You never know what you'll find. Don't be a follower. We'll talk to you
guys.
Bye-bye.
Be well, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you.